Have you had an encounter you'd like to hear narrated on this channel? Well, if so, send me an email with all the details. And don't leave anything out. You can send your email directly to me at contact@buckeyebigfoot.com. Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome or welcome back, as the case may be. Now, tonight's trail through Sasquatch Valley is going to start off in Arizona. From there, we're heading to New Mexico. Then we're going to head straight north up into Colorado. So grab your snackage and saddle up. We've sure got some miles to cover before the moon is high in the sky tonight. Let's go. Hello, Nance. I was born and raised on the San Carlos Apache Reservation in Arizona. I did not have an actual sight encounter of Bigfoot, but I do believe I got a response to tree knocking that I was conducting while I was accompanying my younger brother on a fishing trip that we took in the late afternoon. We had gone to an area that had a pond around some woods, and if I'm correct, it's called Clover Tank Pond, which is located approximately 65 miles northeast of the main San Carlos Reservation. So, long story short, we arrived late afternoon time, and while my brother was getting his tackle together for fishing, I went walking around the pond area, and I heard an elk bellowing in the distance. This was the month of May, 2018. I have believed in Bigfoot, ever since my father heard a hollering out sound of what is evidently a Bigfoot yell or scream. Also, Dad had it in the same area that we were fishing that day. Well, just to be silly, I decided that I would find a sturdy tree branch and put out a few tree knocks, just to see if there would be any response. I even explained to my brother that that's what I was doing in case he thought I was crazy. So I made about 3 tree knocks, waited for about 5 minutes, then did a few more. We did not hear any response to the knocks at that time, so while my brother fished, I wandered around the pond. I saw cows coming in for a drink, and then heard an elk bellow a couple times. We were just enjoying the outdoors. About 6:30, when the sun started to set, we decided it was time to head home. My brother had gotten cow muck on the lower half of his legs, so he had to find some loose branches off a tree to try and get some of the muck off. While we were packing up, I was putting the tailgate up on the back of the truck. We heard a very loud and very clear one-tree knock. Just one response from somewhere below the pond area. Once my brother and I heard that knock, we both at the same time pointed in the direction we heard it coming from. Well, that's all it took, and my brother looked at me and said, "Time to go." Now, needless to say, we jumped in the truck and headed home. According to some folks on the reservation, the woods located in what is called the Point of Pines area of San Carlos Reservation, again, northeast of the main population, that area has been known for Bigfoot activity. I am sorry, but as I mentioned, this was not an actual sighting, just one response. But it was enough for me to get rattled a bit. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell of Bigfoot encounters, even though it wasn't for us. Sincerely, Rhonda. Hi, Nance. You can call me Mimi Sue. About a year to a year and a half ago, I had a young man that was my caregiver for a short while. We'll call him Daniel. He and my daughter had been friends since we moved out here to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico in 2005. Now, I will get back to Daniel's story in a moment. But yes, that is really the name of our town. A lot of folks think we made the name up, but back in the 1950s, Ralph Edwards hosted a game show by the same name. He drove across the country to see if he could get any town to change their name to the same. Truth or Consequences was originally known as Hot Springs, New Mexico. But the town took a vote, and, the rest is history. Now, Truth or Consequences is practically in the middle of nowhere. You have to drive an hour in any direction to get to bigger cities. We are right dab in the middle between El Paso, Texas, to the south, Albuquerque, New Mexico, to the north, Silver City, New Mexico, to the west, and Roswell, New Mexico. Yes, the same place the UFO crashed in the 1940s. Well, that's to the east. The two things that draw in the crowds here are the Hot Springs Mineral Bathhouses and Elephant Butte Lake, the largest lake in the state. The lake still draws in a lot of tourism, but sadly, the lake is nothing like it used to be because former Governor Bill Richardson sold the water rights to Texas and Mexico, so there's not near the water that we once had. We also have the Rio Grande that runs through here as well. When the dam has the water running to help irrigate the farmlands around us, well, then the river is really nice. Now, back to what Daniel has shared with me. He told me that about 5, 6, or maybe even 7 years ago, perhaps, he had been dating this young lady. There's an area a little south of town that has a small wooded area that is down by the river. He said he had taken his girlfriend to this place to talk and to spend a little time with her before taking her home. While they were out there at this area, they began hearing noises outside the vehicle. I don't remember every detail about what he shared with me, but he said that he got out of the vehicle to find out if maybe there was a cow or a bull that had gotten caught in the mesquite bushes that are everywhere around here. As he was checking things out, he saw something in front of him, which he said, when he saw it, it scared him so bad that he literally wet his own pants. He described it as over 7 feet tall. He said it scared him so bad he jumped back into his vehicle and got out of there. He said it was dark in color, but the rest of the encounter was a blur because it scared him so bad. He shared with me this encounter, but has not shared it with others because, like so many others, when saying they have seen a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, they are frowned upon. Daniel was a public service officer, so he did not want to be ridiculed from his encounter. After that night, he had not returned to that location. Now, I am not saying that I believe in Bigfoot, and I'm not saying that I don't. I have personally not seen one. I have never been camping in the wilderness, and I would not know the first thing about doing so. I was not fortunate enough to go, as my dad, when I was growing up, always told me that my britches were always too close to the ground, and I did not need to go. I am up in age now, and due to some difficult times in my life, I would not be able to get down on the ground to be able to sleep on the ground. I have problems with my back, a total knee replacement on my right knee, and they want to replace the left knee, but I'm not ready for that right now. I do hope that I will still get to go camping at least one time before something happens to me and my children and grandchildren, and I don't count an RV as camping. I have heard so many stories about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and the abominable snowman, but I have never had the opportunity to get out into nature to see if they are out there. I'm not sure what I would do if I ever encountered one. I have heard both good and bad, so I would not know what to expect if I ever came upon one, or one came upon me. Well, Nance, that's the story that was told to me. Daniel did not go into any long description, but he did say that he knew that he saw a Bigfoot. You can use my story if you want. You don't have to. I just thought it was pretty interesting to hear from someone close to home for me. There have been sightings around Jemez Springs, New Mexico, and between Taos, New Mexico, and Colorado. We have national forests all around us, so I would not doubt that there's a possibility of one right here in my backyard. Respectfully, Mimi Sue. In July 2016, me and my friend Jaden, we were in the Bighorn National Forest area. We came down from Rock Chuck Pass, where we had camped the night before. From there we took Coney Creek off of Rock Chuck and headed toward the lake. We got to the lake in late afternoon. After that, we backed up the creek and put down camp in an open area between some forest pieces with the creek to the front and a rocky rise to the back of us. I found it on Google Maps, and here are the approximate coordinates. 40 degrees, 7 minutes, 21.1 seconds north, by 105 degrees, 35 minutes, 42.2 seconds west. I'm also sending a Google Maps shot of the area, so hopefully it will make sense. Fire on the ground of any kind there was not allowed. That meant no campfire at night. We were relying on a small propane single-flame stove to heat our food, and we had a couple of wind-up solar lanterns and flashlights for light. So we ate that evening, cleaned up, then we were sitting around and talking. We usually did that until it was just too dark to see anymore. Then we went to sleep. We were talking, and all of a sudden Jaden said, "I think there's somebody over there." He was pointing. I looked to where he was pointing right past me, over to the trees to the right. I was sitting facing the creek at a slight angle. I look over, and I didn't see anyone, but it was pretty dark to me because I just looked away from where the lantern was. As a matter of fact, even after a minute, I don't know how he saw anything. It was too dark. I said, "I didn't see anyone." He said he was sure that he just saw someone over there. He kept looking over that way. So I decided to call out a hello, and then I said if someone was out there, they were welcome to join us. There was about 3 seconds of silence after that. Then suddenly we heard an ear-splitting yelling sound. It wasn't a roar or a growl. I don't think it could be called a howl either. It was very high-pitched, but it had strength and depth to it. We were only about 60 or 70 feet away from it, so it was really loud. We both jumped straight up. I carry a compact 9mm Beretta, which was holstered on my thigh. I think Jaden was carrying his .357, but he might have been carrying another of his pistols. I don't remember. But right then, I was wishing I was carrying one of my bigger pistols. But all I had was that Beretta, and I had it out in a microsecond. I had never heard anything like that in my life. Now, I'm not the kind who says his hair stands up on end very easily or anything like that. But if there was ever a time in my life that my hair stood up on end, it had to be right then that night. It was a 3 or 4 second yell, and when it cut off, you couldn't hear anything. Everything went quiet. I swear, I think the creek stopped flowing. When it cut off, it stayed silent for 2 or 3 seconds. Then there was a heck of a racket in those trees to the right. Cracking and snapping and branches whooshing in the air. Sounded like a herd of elephants stomping around over there in the trees. Every now and then we heard more weird yelps, and then there were some other sounds that I don't even know how to describe. I am sure, though, there was more than one over there. We agreed because you could hear the sounds and the voices overlapping. This went on for a minute, maybe a minute and a half. But standing there, it felt like forever, though. When it began to quiet down, I told Jaden I didn't like being here with trees on either side of us in this meadow. There were too many places for someone to hide. He agreed. So we said forget that. We each grabbed our sleeping bags, the lanterns, and we headed straight up to the rocky area that was behind us. We were noisy, and the rocks slipping as we went up were very loud. We sat on folded sleeping bags up there on the rocks. It was our best solution at the time. There were no trees up there, so if anything came out towards us on the rocks, we'd hear them. Those rocks would roll and tumble, just as they did when we came up. Maybe 10 minutes later, we heard rocks clattering and rolling down, but it was way off to the right of us, just out of reach of our flashlights. There was something out there walking around us on the rocks. I never did see it, but there was something out there. And more than a few times, small rocks came flying at us. Jaden took one right to the side of his head. It about knocked him out. If it had been bigger, it probably would have. But no matter what we did, I just couldn't see who or what it was. Now one time, Jaden got up and he went chasing after the area that a rock came from because it hit him again. But that didn't last long. He was back next to me in no time. He wouldn't budge again. I looked at him, and he was scared to death, like I've never seen him, and we've been friends since 4th grade. I asked Jaden, did he see who it was? He said, yeah. I waited and waited for him to say something else, so finally I said, and? He looked at me and he said, trust me, you do not want to know, my friend. I said, actually, yeah, I do want to know. I mean, are we dealing with an axe-wielding maniac out there, or what? He waited just a second. Then he deadpan said, no, it was a Sasquatch. Now, I was speechless for a second. I never knew him to really be much of a prankster, not in these kinds of situations, and I was pretty sure he would never prank me right then. But then the other part of me said, there's no way there's a Sasquatch out there. So I said to him, no, really, come on, what did you see out there? He looked at me and he said, no, really, Brian, it was a Sasquatch. One huge, tall, hairy, football-shaped head effing Sasquatch. And he was getting pissed at me, I could tell, or maybe scared, maybe both. So I said, hey, I saw your flashlight when you went out there. I didn't see a Sasquatch in the light. I didn't see it hit anything. Then he said, yeah, that's the thing. I didn't see it either until I literally almost plowed right into it. It looks like the dark, like the shadows, but man, it's got eyes. He said some more things, and I listened. Then we heard some of those weird sounds again. This time they were below us. They traveled up to the rocky area where we were. It sounded for all the world like something was trying to talk to us, but in a very angry way. This wasn't a yelling sound. They were sounds strung together, like the way we talk in sentences, but it was nothing like I've ever heard. And then it would just stop, like it was waiting for an answer or maybe thinking of something else to say. I also heard some other sounds below, but we didn't figure out until morning what we were hearing. It was them tearing up all of our stuff. I will tell you, that was a very long night. No sleep for either of us, of course. Over and over, we would hear rocks rolling all around us in the dark. A few times the rocks came down from above us, so it had made a very wide circle around us. We were trapped on that hillside with the Sasquatch circling us in the darkness, and there was no way out. There was only a sliver of a moon in the sky, which didn't give us much light, and you really don't understand just how long night is until you're waiting for sunrise. We kept winding up our little lanterns. They're solar lanterns, but there's a wind-up function for backup use when there's no sun, and we sure put them to use that night. Between the flashlights and those lanterns, we lit up all we could see until sunrise. But all the noise and all the aggression stopped somewhere after 2 a.m. I suddenly realized I hadn't heard anything in a long while. I looked down at my watch. It was 2:47 a.m. But we stayed awake, and we looked all around until well past sunrise. By blue light in the morning, we could look down to our camp area, and we saw that everything was messed up and torn up. I believe in packing everything out when you camp, and I always do, except for that day. There was no packing anything up. I never even found my pack for one thing, so there was nothing to carry all the torn-out stuff up in if I wanted to. We left everything, except our guns and our water, and we hot-footed it out of there. So that's all there is, Nance. While I never saw it, I know it was very close to us all night, at least one and probably several of them. Jaden says he saw it, and I absolutely believe him. Like I said, we've been pals since 4th grade. He's never lied to me like that. He was that kid who studied worms and lizards and snakes and had big, thick glasses, and he read every book he could find. He was quiet and serious. He was not the prankster in the class. So if he said he saw a Sasquatch, I'd bet my life and my pension on it that that's what he saw. And from his description, I am glad I didn't see it. Later on, he told me that when he came upon it, it must have been squatted down or something, because it just rose up in front of him when he was just a few feet from it. He said the face looked murderous and terrifying. He said he was so close that he saw the whites of its eyes. He said that's one way he knew for sure that it wasn't some escaped gorilla, and it wasn't some human in a fur suit. Those eyes were real, and they were set into the face perfectly. No human's eyes could be that high if it was a suit. He saw the eyes squint hard because of the light. Costumes don't do that. In a costume, the eyes always set back from the mask. I started to think about that, and I realized Jaden would sure know. Him and his family always did one of those fun, scary house for the neighborhoods at Halloween. They would dress up in all kinds of stuff to chase people. Well, the point is, both Jaden and his dad had worn a gorilla suit at some point. So Jaden was right. I remember that. The eyes don't marry up flush to the mask. Ever. Not enough to look real. Now, to this very day, Jaden does not like talking about seeing that Sasquatch. I have tried to get more out of him about it, more detail, but he always shuts down, and then he says he's told me all he can. He about walked right into it, and it looked murderous. And that's the word that Jaden always uses when he talks about it, by the way. He said its face looked murderous, and that it was huge. He turned and ran back to where I was, and all the time he said he thought he was surely a dead man running the whole way. But he made it, and so did I. Well, I appreciate you letting me tell our story. Thank you a lot. Signed, Brian R. from Boulder, Colorado.